Hello, my name is Joshua Kennedy, and I am presenting for the Dungeons & Dragons Fighter Character Generator Group. Other group members are Spencer Nogler, Josh Wright, and Colin Thomas. To begin with, I'm going to demonstrate our program in its current state. Iteration 2 complete. So our program uses Java effects on a Java 13 environment with Gradle. First thing you can do, and it's very similar to the last time, as I'm sure many of you remember, you can just pick your character name. So for this, we're going to call this Presentation Guy. You know, we'll even get crazier. Presentation Guy Extreme. And Presentation Guy can be one of the base 5e races. So for this, we'll go with, let's do Dwarf. And you can roll your dice. Now these don't actually put the values here. We want you to be able to choose whether or not you want to use a dice roll. But know that when you roll this button, these use the standard dice rolling rules. So that's always an option. You don't have to roll them all out. But for this, we'll just pick some nice even values so that we can see that reflected very well on the character sheet at the end. So you can really see what you're getting. Well, we'll pick one odd one just so we can show that the math works correctly there as well. Okay, so moving on, we've selected all of our core stats here. Just like last time, you still get to pick a fighting style. So we'll go with defense. And, each dwarf has a sub-race option. So in 5e, you can be a hill dwarf and be a little bit wiser than the average little guy, or you can be a mountain dwarf and be a little bit stronger, be a little bit bigger little guy. And of course, at any time during our program, this is something we did have to modify a little bit because there were some problems with it, but you can change any aspect of your character. So maybe I want to be a half-orc, or maybe I want to be a dragonborn, and I'm going to go in here, and instead of a stat bonus, dragonborn's going to pick a breath attack. But anyways, we'll go back. Oh, sorry. Go back to dwarf. Why not? Dwarf's pretty cool. Alright, so moving on. This is where we get into the new stuff. Iteration 2. We now allow the users to pick a background background and skills. So each background gives 2 skills, and by skills, you have all of the skills as a Dungeons and Dragons character. You have a bunch of skills that you pick from, and all of those skills give you a bonus based off of one of your core stats. But on top of that, you get what's called a proficiency bonus if you select them as one of your proficient skills. And choosing your background primarily gives you 2 proficient skills, but then on top of that, you get additional features and traits from that background. So whenever you pick a background in here, it populates all that information. For now, we'll be a folk hero. Now this is where you get to pick your fighter proficiency. Fighters have a pool of 8 proficiencies that, as a fighter, it makes sense for you to be proficient in. And you select 2 of those, and you get to add at level 1 a +2 to all of those whenever you roll the dice. But you get to pick 2. So at the end of this construction at level 1, you will have 4 skills that you are proficient in, and all 4 of those skills you get a +2 to. Now this pool only shows 6 here, but that's because both of the skill proficiencies that Folk Hero grants are also fighter options. So we don't want the user to be able to duplicate that selection. Otherwise, they're really going to end up with 2 proficiencies. So when you pick 2 here, so we'll say we'll go. He's a little bit of a history buff, or she's a little bit of a history buff, and then we will save it. So we're going to save this. And let me pull that back up so everyone can kind of see what it looks like. Give me just a second here. Okie dokie. Let me minimize this a little bit. Make sure that's still up and running. There we go. So this is what it spits out at the end. if we fill out the same fields we did last time, and on top of that, we now have the background up here. Uh, all of the stats are now calculating correctly. We had a problem with that last time, but we have since fixed the math and logic to get you the correct stats. Let me zoom in a little bit more. Those are a little bit hard to read. Um, this is really cool. This is the skill pane. I really like how they actually did it for the fifth edition of Dungeons and Dragons. But for us, um, it made a very good finished product easily achievable. So if they're proficient, we have the program fill out these little check boxes, and then also it adds the +2. So most of the time, those proficient scores are going to be a bit higher. So you got a 5 here, and you got a 5 here. And that's not always the case. You could have for example, an 8 in strength, and even though you picked athletics as your proficient score, you're starting with a -1 because you only have an 8 in strength, so it's still going to be pretty low. But it does calculate that. And then down here is actually where it spits out all of those text traits that you get from Fighter, which was already there, but now also from Background. And Folk Hero has the Rustic Hospitality background trait. So I really like how you can just fill this. It's a scroll box by default in the PDF. Normally, you'd handwrite and really have to cramp and get something that they might abbreviate it, but now you can list all of it there. This is why I always, whenever I play Dungeons and Dragons personally, I will use a digital sheet, and I feel like this is really helpful and really exemplifies why that's good. So let's go ahead and close out of this, and now we'll move on to some of our user stories, or well, our user story. So almost all of this is the same as last time. Really, we don't want to lose any of that foundation. We've got any of what we could do with the program before. We did add a few things. So now we want to be able to choose a background, and we also want to be able to choose skills. And as I exemplified in the program, we can do that. So that's good. We have satisfied that condition of our user story. And then this was modified from last time. Before, we just wanted to be able to save the file. Now we want to be able to choose the location. And we kind of had the location working at the end of iteration 1, but there were some definite kinks and bugs. So we did want to note that this is a difference from the last time. And it is fixed, and it works. And as you saw, I was able to save that where I wanted, and I was able to dredge it back up from where I wanted. For our acceptance tests, we have the user open the program twice, once to open and then save, and then once to open, and then if they want to save, they can. It's assumed that they can, but we directed them to. But the first time, they're just creating a character, setting core stats, weapon style, changing some stuff. This is all stuff that should have been able to be done in iteration 1, so we're just verifying we haven't lost that progress. And then number 2, this is kind of the fix acceptance test case. Can they save that to the desktop instead of the default folder where it was going? And all of our acceptance testers were able to complete the first 2 conditions with no problems whatsoever, as well as the third. And third was, can you select and reselect skills and backgrounds? And they were given a specific, task to do, and they were all able to do it. As a matter of fact, our acceptance testers were honestly, in my opinion, they were a little bit too liking of our program. I would have liked a lot more constructive criticism. So I guess it's kind of a curse and a blessing when they like it too much. It's like, great, this is awesome. But I also want to know we as a group also want to know what features we could add or improve on. The only one we saw, and this is something we actually kind of, from doing our user stories and simulating through that, we were like, man, this would be a good change. This is something I want to do. But we had acceptance tester 5 here mention that they would like to see a feature to rename the PDF file to whatever they choose. And that's something we actually saw in acceptance tests for iteration 1, and we thought about adding it for iteration 2. But we prioritize some other functional needs and cleaning the code instead. That is something I will promise, and our group promises to add to iteration 3. Back for popular request and just for functionality, it doesn't make sense to always save the PDF as the character name. So we're going to get that added. But other than that, really everyone was able to complete the tests with quote, no issues whatsoever. And these are original statements. We haven't doctored these. So if you see some spelling errors or some grammatical errors, don't worry. We're not revealing the persons who wrote its name, but also it was not us. I'm not saying we're perfect, but they're not ours. Oh, we did add photo credits. All of the photographs used in the program are available for free personal use. So if we were to commercialize this program, we would most of those websites we would have to purchase the rights to distribute the image. However, we are not profiting from this, so I believe we are okay. Um, in conclusion, oh, you know what? Actually, I need to address one more thing. So the critical component we added, and I feel like this was kind of implied, but I do want to specifically address it. The critical component we added were the backgrounds and skills. So that was the huge focus. That and of course cleaning. We had some massive problems with model view separation in our code that we have since fixed. But this was the number one thing we added. So those two kind of pages or scenes that we added for background and skills took a lot of time, and we knew it was going to be a big time commitment. Just looking at all the factors that kind of go into calculating all the storage and if this then that work. A lot of conditions for setting those skills in their final positions. But that was the key focus, the critical component this time around, and I think we executed that pretty well. We had some hiccups with it generating to the PDF, so I know we kind of frantically tried to fix that at the last second, but we did get it working, and it does look pretty clean in the code. And we're satisfied with the backgrounds and skills and the completion of that critical component. Yeah, I guess in resolution, thanks everyone for watching. I really enjoy kind of looking at all of your other programs on GitHub. I think they're all going along swimmingly, and I look forward to watching all of your videos. Thanks. Have a great day. Stay safe.